All right, good morning. Back again. It's very interesting when I do these videos about fighters and I'll make points and I'll have some constructive criticism on some of the things that they say, some of the things that they do. As I said, I think all of us are biased, but even with that bias, we have to look at a situation and try to be objective as possible, right? We have to look at it and try to remove the bias for that fighter or athlete that we admire, right? That we have respect for. And it's okay to admire athletes, it's okay to respect athletes, it's okay to look at them and say, wow, this guy is a good person. I like this guy. But at the end of the day, we all have people who we love and admire, and we respect, whether it be a family member, a wife, a child. But think about this: no one ever goes through their life in a relationship with someone who they're friends with, who they admire. No one will go through a relationship and never have a disagreement with that person, right? Whether you're in a relationship with a woman who you love dearly, you may just have a disagreement on something. You may have a dispute. You may have a philosophical difference. You may have a son or a daughter, right? You're raising this son or daughter, and you want them to go down a particular career path that you think would be best for them, but they may choose to do something different. So then you have a disagreement and you criticize that person. And depends on how you criticize them. If it's constructive criticism, or if you are hostile in your criticism, then sometimes friction will arise in that situation. But like I said, you're always going to be in relationships with people, whether you love or you hate them, where you're going to be in a disagreement with them, right? And that's fine. So, as I've said several times here, and I'm going to once again repeat myself just for the sake of making an example. Everybody knows that Tyson Fury is currently my favorite fighter right now. Everybody who's followed me knows that Sugar Ray Leonard is my favorite fighter of all time, right? I like both guys. Both guys are flawed. Both guys will come out and tell you they're flawed. Both guys will come out and tell you they're not perfect. Both guys can self reflect. Both guys can self deprecate, right? Tyson Fury comes out and tells you, hey, I've said things that sometimes I shouldn't have said. I did things that I probably shouldn't have done. Come out and tell you that stuff, right? Sugar Ray Leonard, same thing. If anyone's watched that Kings documentary, you can definitely see that Sugar Ray Leonard, as big of a media darling that he was in his heyday, had a lot of demons. I've interviewed Sugar Ray Leonard, and we talked about some of those demons, him and I, and that's why I respect the man even more than I did before, because he was so open and forthcoming with some of the mishaps and unfortunate happenings in his life, right? So Tyson Fury, for instance, as much as I admire him as a fighter, as much as I admire him overcoming the depression, whatever, and some people can say, well, that's all BS, the whole depression thing. That's, you're more than welcome to your opinion. I'm not going to try and change your mind. I'm not going to try and have you believe a certain thing about Tyson Fury that you choose to not believe, right? You can have your opinion on the guy, and I can have my opinion on the guy, and I'm not here to try to change your opinion, and I would think that you would not be here to change mine, right? So Tyson Fury in 2015 in the Christian Hammer fight tested positive for nandrolone. Okay, irrefutable. The drug tests are there. It's documented. No one can deny that, right? So he comes out and says that he tested positive because he ate non-castrated boar meat. That was his excuse. So as much as I like that I like Tyson Fury, as much as I like that fighter, right? Logic will not allow me to believe that that was the case. I don't believe his excuse. Okay? As much as I like the guy, I'm not going to believe that excuse. Also, he comes back and says, I'm the lineal champion. I don't think he's the lineal champion, right? Because he stepped away for 3 years. The IBF stripped him. He was being investigated by UCAD, so he wasn't going to be allowed to fight until that investigation was completed, and he more than likely would have had to go through some type of suspension for the positive drug test, right? For testing positive for nandrolone. So for him to come back after 3 years and just take his place back in line, I don't think that's fair. I'm not a big lineal guy because the lineage can easily become broken. When Lennox Lewis retired, to me, Lennox Lewis was the last lineal champion. When he retired, the lineage was broken. And then for some reason, someone gave the lineage to Vladimir Klitschko. That's always going to be debatable. But that's neither here nor there. That's just my opinion. It's open to debate, right? So as much as I like Tyson Fury as a fighter, if he says something that I think is outlandish, right? If he says something that I don't agree with, then I'm going to point it out. I may have some constructive criticism about what he said. I may try to dissect it and say, well, he said this, but this is why I don't believe it's true. Doesn't mean I don't like the guy anymore. Doesn't mean I don't admire him as a fighter. Doesn't mean he sucks all of a sudden. It's okay to not agree with everything somebody says, even if you like them or not. But some of you just don't get it, right? Let me talk about Sugar Ray Leonard a little bit before I segue into my next point. So Sugar Ray Leonard, love the guy. Love the guy, right? Outstanding fighter, very entertaining. Every time I would watch Ray Leonard fight, it made me feel good. I just enjoyed watching this guy fight. But once again, 1982, he has this big event, right? And he had everybody there. I think Hagler was there. I think a lot of big boxing people were there. And everyone thought that he was going to announce that big, long-awaited match with Marvin Hagler. But what does he do? Pulls the wool over everybody's eyes. And he announces his retirement. And leaving Marvin Hagler sitting there feeling embarrassed, right? Leaving Marvin Hagler sitting there feeling embarrassed. As much as I love Sugar Ray Leonard as a fighter, as much as I admire the man, right? That was a bad look for Sugar Ray Leonard. That's just my opinion. By me saying that, does that mean I hate Sugar Ray Leonard? Does that mean he's a bad person? No. I just questioned why he did that. I thought it was inappropriate. Another thing Sugar Ray Leonard did when he fought Donnie Lalonde, right? Donnie Lalonde was the 175-pound champion, but Sugar Ray Leonard wanted to win 2 belts on the same night, right? So what does he do? He petitions the WBC to have Donnie Lalonde's 175-pound title be on the line, but making Donnie Lalonde come down to 168, which is not his natural weight. You could tell that he was drained at that weight. He was not at his best, right? So what he did was he fought Donnie Lalonde for 2 belts on the same night. One of the belts was the 168-pound vacant super middleweight title, right? Vacant super middleweight title, and Donnie Lalonde's 175-pound title on the same night. Now, I thought that was BS. If you're going to make the guy come down to 168, then fight him for the 168-pound vacant title. Now, obviously, Donnie Lalonde was going to make $10 million for that event, so he wasn't going to turn down the fight. But to make the guy put up his 175-pound title on the same night when Sugar Ray Leonard knew full well that he was never, ever going to try and defend that 175-pound title because he knew he wasn't a light heavyweight. He was far from it. You know, he weighed 162 pounds for that fight, and he had rolls of quarters in his sweatpants. So that was BS. And I said it. I said I think it was a cheap way to win 2 titles in 2 different weight classes on the same night. If you're going to make the guy come down to 168, don't make him put his 175-pound title on the line just so you could say that you're a champion in 5 weight classes, because that was a cheap way to win a title, in my opinion, because you knew you weren't really a light heavyweight. You knew you were never going to defend that belt. So you should have just fought him for the 168-pound title and called it a day. I was critical of that. Does that mean I don't like Sugar Ray Leonard? No. So you can admire a fighter. You can respect a fighter. Doesn't mean you have to ride with that guy even when he says outlandish things that just don't make sense. Tyson Fury saying that he tested positive for nandrolone because he ate uncastrated boar meat was a ridiculous statement. Tyson Fury, who walked away from the sport for 3 years, right? And had the IBF strip him because he didn't fight as mandatory, right? He was under investigation because of testing positive for nandrolone by UKAD, right? In the 2015 fight with Christian Hammer. So he was going to be on the shelf regardless if he decided to walk away or not, right? So what happened to Tyson Fury was his own fault. As much as I admire the guy, as much as I still think he's the best heavyweight in boxing right now, as much as he's still my favorite fighter in boxing right now, I'm not going to just co-sign everything that he says and does. If I feel that something he says isn't cool, it's wrong, or he shouldn't have said it, I'm going to come out and say that, right? If I dispute his lineage or his claim to being the lineal champion, right? That's my opinion. That doesn't mean I hate the guy, right? I'm just giving my opinion. So you guys, what I believe, have what's called hero worship syndrome. So it's foolish or excessive admiration of someone, right? So when you have a foolish, excessive admiration of someone, right? You're putting that guy on a pedestal, right? And no matter what he does, he can do no wrong. Guys like Tyson Fury and Sugar Ray Leonard, they'll tell you themselves they're not perfect human beings, right? They'll tell you themselves that they've made mistakes in their life, right? And in their careers. Ray Leonard would tell you, hey, you know what? That first Duran fight, I let him get in my head. And I didn't fight the fight that I should have fought against him. That was my fault. Didn't make excuses, took ownership of it, right? He didn't blame anything. Didn't say Duran cheated or anything. He just said that was my fault, right? Duran made me angry, and I fought him in a way that was beneficial to him, right? He said that. In the second fight with Tommy Hearns, when he got a draw, he came out and clearly stated, I thought Hearns won that fight. So that Sugar Ray Leonard is able to self-reflect, right? He could look at a situation objectively and he can be honest about a situation, right? He doesn't have to convince himself of something just to make himself feel good, right? He's real with himself. He's honest. Tyson Fury's the same way, right? He knows. He knows that he's not perfect as a fighter. He knows that, he suffered from depression. He knows that he had issues with substance abuse, right? Same thing with Ray Leonard. These guys admit it, right? Sometimes Tyson Fury will continuously say things that are outlandish and ridiculous, right? He'll troll people. He'll say one thing one day and then say another day, but that doesn't take away from the fact that he's still, in my opinion, the best boxer in the heavyweight division. I can answer you this question. I can show you a video in which Sugar Ray Leonard offered Aaron Pryor $500,000 to fight him. And that was actually the offer that was presented to Aaron Pryor. And he actually turned down the fight. He's on video saying they offered me. Aaron Pryor is on video. I can send you that link. I have you follow me on Instagram. I can send you that link where Aaron Pryor was offered $500,000, and that was back in 1981. So think about how much $500,000 was back in 1981. Aaron Pryor thought that the fight was worth more, and he should have got more, and he didn't want to fight him because he thought the purse was too low. So that is one misconception out there that I have proof of, and I could provide proof of, and I have provided proof of in the past. It's on YouTube. If you just Google Ray Leonard offers Aaron Pryor 500,000, that video will come up for you. So that is one misconception. But the misconception of, there is no misconception. There is no misconception of Leonard stringing Hagler along all those years. That's facts. There is no misconception about Ray Leonard taking a 175-pound fighter and draining him down to 168 and having him put his 175-pound title and 168-pound title on the line on the same night. That I don't agree with. See, so I can constructively criticize fighters who I admire, fighters who I like, right? Because again, I don't paint myself into a corner. These guys are human beings just like me. They may enter the ring, and for 48 minutes, these guys look like superheroes to us because they're doing something that we can't do. But at the end of the day, they got to go home and live their lives just like we do. And at the end of the day, they have problems just like we do. At the end of the day, they may wake up and not feel good just like we do. They're not these gods or these kings or these superheroes like people think they are. At least not 24/7, right? Everybody has flaws, right? Nobody's perfect. Everybody makes mistakes, okay? So these people here in the boxing community, they have what's called a foolish, excessive admiration of somebody. Putting someone on a pedestal so high. You actually even have people on here calling Deontay Wilder a king, looking at another man as their ruler, right? I just don't understand how someone who's in their mid to late 40s, pushing 50, can call another grown man a king, right? I don't know how another grown man, no matter what someone says to them, just because they have an excessive admiration for that person, they're going to believe no matter what that person says, whether it's logical or not. Okay? That is called hero worship syndrome. And usually these people, again, they're the types of people who have deficiencies in their own social lives, right? They may be socially inept, right? They may have some type of anti-social condition, right? Where they lack confidence or self-esteem in their own life. A lot of these guys, when you have a guy like who in broad daylight is wearing sunglasses because he doesn't want to show his face, when you have these guys coming up with these fake names, they can't even tell you who they really are. I mean, that's fine if you're concerned about being doxxed or whatever, that's fine. But it is what it is. But most of these people, they create these characters for themselves, like Hulk Hogan is really Terry Jean Bollea, but he created the character Hulk Hogan. When you have these guys that call themselves, I'm such and such this, I'm such and such that, a lot of them don't even show their face on camera, right? A lot of them, when they do show their face on camera, they wear sunglasses and they have some fake name out there, and they're always in a dark room somewhere, so you really can't make out what they look like. So you get these guys who are creating caricatures of themselves. So what you see on here, right? What you see on here is not the real person. It's not who they really are, right? Now, some of them, you have to question whether they really do worship another man. Like the evidence suggests, they have this blind loyalty to somebody, and no matter what that person says, they have. See, when you don't have the ability to criticize someone, even when they're wrong, right? Because it damages your opinion of that person. You feel as though that person, if you criticize them or you have a difference of opinion of that person, then it's going to make that person lesser than, right? It's going to not make them the hero that you think they are or you want them to be, right? Because you need that person to be perfect because you know deep down inside that you're flawed. So you need to live vicariously through another person who you think is not flawed, right? We all wake up some days, or at least me, I'll wake up some days and I'm looking for answers too. You know, I'm not happy every day I wake up. I look and you know, I'll just think when I'm, you know, there's moments in my life when I just think and I look back at people that are no longer here with me. And it hurts sometimes, right? And you get down. At least I do, right? Sometimes I find myself looking for answers too, right? But guess what? You're not going to find it in Deontay Wilder. You're not going to find it in Tyson Fury. These guys can't fix you. You have to fix yourself. You have to look for the answers yourself, right? You have to find ways to enjoy your life. You can't live vicariously through someone else. The old Bronx Tale movie, when they had that exchange with C, the young boy, and Sonny, the mob boss, they were at a game, Yankees game, right? And I'm not the first to use this example, so I'm not saying that I am. Other channels have used this example too. So they were at a Yankees game, and at the end of the game, the Yankees lost. Mickey Mantle had a real bad game, right? So the young boy says, "Yeah, I feel bad for Mickey Mantle. He had a bad game. He was actually looking very sad at the end of the game. I feel bad for him." Right? Right? So then Sonny turns to C, the young boy, and says, "Why are you feeling sorry for Mickey Mantle? Why do you even care about him? He doesn't care about you. If your father can't pay the rent, he can't keep the lights on, he can't pay the bills. Is Mickey Mantle gonna pay your bills for you?" Right? And then the kid was like, "Yeah, no." So he saw it. So you can admire these fighters, you can admire these athletes, but if you're looking for something in these athletes, if you're looking for these athletes to fill a void in yourself, in your life that's missing, if that's what you're looking for, you're not going to find it, bro. You're not going to get it. Deontay Wilder, as much as you want him to be, he's not Martin Luther King. He's not Malcolm X. He's not that guy. He just isn't. He just isn't. You guys created a social media personality. You guys created this character. And Deontay Wilder's getting all this admiration and he's getting all this hero worshiping from you guys. And I can imagine how intoxicating that must be, how that must give him a sense of power that could even enhance, in my opinion, again, this is my opinion. I'm not a psychiatrist, not a psychologist, but I analyze things. I do, do research on things. I talk to people, right? I go through things myself in an attempt to learn about things, right? So I'm sure all that admiration, right? Fame is intoxicating, right? Fame is intoxicating. When you look at a man like Deontay Wilder, who used to work at fast food places, right? He used to have to drive a truck just to put food on the table. And then 20 years old, he walks into the gym and becomes a boxer, right? Wins a bronze medal at the Olympics, right? Becomes the heavyweight champion of the world, right? All those things are enough to admire the guy. But guess what? It wasn't enough to make him famous, right? So as I've said before, and as everyone knows, it's not just me saying this, controversy sells, right? So just like sometimes in professional wrestling, when you have these characters, um, you know, at some point in their careers, you have one character who's the bad guy, like Bret Hart when he first came out. He was the bad guy, right? But he really couldn't draw as a bad guy. So what did they do? They made him the good guy, right? And when he became the good guy, what happened? They made him the hero of Canada, right? They made him the world heavyweight champion, right? That's when he became more popular. That's when he started selling out arenas, right? So when Deontay Wilder, the real Deontay Wilder, unfortunately, and I really mean that, unfortunately, it wasn't enough to sell, right? So what did he do? He became this controversial figure, right? He became this controversial figure. Do I believe that he really is that person? Well, I'll never know. Could it be that he was always this person, but he never wanted to show it because he was concerned coming up that maybe if he did show this, it would affect his career negatively? Possible. But it's funny to me that a man who turned pro in 2008, right? Late in 2008, all of a sudden, from 2008 to 2018, he was the guy. The narrative. I'm not even gonna say the narrative. The truth was he was a guy who got into the sport of boxing to help out his family, his daughter. Right, daughter had spina bifida, so this was a way he could pay her medical bills. Right, and this was a way he could take care of his family. Right, this was to get him out of the financial, the poor financial situation that he was in. Right. That story in itself should have been enough, right, for people to get behind Deontay Wilder, right? But unfortunately, it wasn't, right? Unfortunately, it wasn't. So you have these people on YouTube, these channels, right, that created this character that made Deontay Wilder this person that they wanted him to be. They wanted him to be this king, so they say. He's our king, right? Deontay Wilder, you're our king. You represent us, right? And they turned it into a race issue when it never was before. From 2008, for 9 years, it wasn't a race issue. But guess what? We see the current climate in the country, how everything right now is about race. Race is a hot button issue, right? It rained out today. That's because of racism. No matter what happens, it's always going to be because of racism today, right? I'm being honest. Am I going to say that racism doesn't exist? Of course, no one's going to say that. But global warming is not a result of racism. It just isn't. Anyone that says that, it just doesn't make sense, right? COVID is not a racial disease. Now, do lower income people suffer probably more from COVID than higher income people? Yes, because obviously it's a class thing. You know, I got the vaccine, but I'll tell you this. All the NBA players got it way earlier than me. I'm 52 years old. I have respiratory issues. I had childhood asthma, right? I didn't get my vaccine till April 24th. Right? All those NBA players got it way before me. Why? Because they're in a different economic class than I am, right? I'm not as rich as those guys, so I'm not going to be afforded the benefit of getting the vaccine early, right? So yeah, of course, there's race issues, but there's also class issues in this country as well. We're not going to turn this into a political show, but at the end of the day, I mean that's the reality of life, right? So unfortunately, Deontay Wilder, by being controversial, by saying controversial things, it actually made him more popular. That's the reality of the situation. In the Anthony Joshua situation, he had to be the bad guy, right? In this situation now, he's being labeled as the bad guy, right? He's wearing the black hat in this promotion. He's the guy that doesn't want to talk to anybody, right? He's the guy that made all these accusations. He's the one that's saying the reason why he lost was because of white privilege, right? He's making this into something that I frankly don't think it is. But it doesn't matter what I think, because guess what? 78 Sports, Blue Blood Sports, Fred Hawthorne, Boxing Ego, the LDBC, they've created a movement, right? They've created a financial windfall for themselves. These guys are making huge amounts of money with this movement, right? Do they believe it? Maybe. Whether they believe it or not, they are pushing out a narrative, right? They are pushing out a narrative. And it's working. Whether I agree with the narrative or not, whether I support the narrative or not, I'm not here to censor them. I'm not here to censor any of them. But the narrative does go against fundamental knowledge, logic. It goes against fundamental logic. To be able to accuse somebody of something and not having to bring any proof to the table, it just isn't credible. It's not logical. It's not credible. It's just not reality. But these guys have created a movement. They've got people to believe it, right? Just like the media, right? The media has a way of manipulating people, right? They had us believing that Iraq had weapons of mass destruction when they didn't, right? This is a similar, again, it's a similar situation. Obviously, it's not to that great of a scale. And don't say, Beeb, how can you compare this to the weapons? Again, because two situations have a similarity doesn't mean they're the same. They share a similarity in the way that people can be manipulated to believe something, right? And sometimes people want to believe something, and deep down inside, they know it's not true, but they try to convince themselves that it is. Because why? Everybody's looking for that instant gratification. Everybody wants to feel good, right? Doesn't matter whether it's true or not. People have a way to rationalize things, right? We all have these defense mechanisms inside us, right? We all want to protect ourselves, right? The human body is always fighting and striving to protect itself, not just physically, but mentally. We're always trying to protect our ego, right? Most of us have fragile egos, right? Most people don't have the ability to self-reflect, right? Most people are always going to try a way to justify no matter what they do or what they believe. Why? Because sometimes the reality of a situation hurts too much, right? It hurts too much. So why not just believe the pretty lie over the ugly truth? So a lot of these people on here with fake names, fake avatars, right? They can come on here and be somebody that they know they could never be in real life. They know they could never be that person in real life. They know that. But this is their sanctuary here on YouTube. We belong to a group now, right? We're part of a movement. This is adding significance to my life, right? And full disclosure, I come on here sometimes and it's an escape for me. When I do that show every Sunday, and I tell Eric this all the time, makes me feel good. I enjoy it. But I'm not going to lie to myself or ever lie to you, right? I'm a flawed human being. And by admitting that I'm flawed, it gives me peace of mind, knowing that I don't have to be perfect, right? I don't want to live through somebody else in an attempt to try to find perfection, right? Because I'm never going to find it, right? I'm looking for progress, not perfection, right? So if I can improve myself every day, then that's a win for me. If I could learn something new every day, that's a win for me. If you can change my mind and logically bring points to the table, right, that make me say to myself, well, maybe I'm wrong in my assessment here, I will concede any point to a person that can do that. But what I will never ever do is believe something, get behind something that I know is fundamentally impossible, fundamentally, logically incorrect, right? I just I can't believe that Tyson Fury had an egg weight in his glove. I can't believe it. I can't believe that the padding was taken out of Tyson Fury's glove. I can't believe it. Why, Beeb? Because the gloves were inspected the day before at the glove inspection meeting, right? Members of the team were there from Wilder's camp, right? Members of the team were there from Wilder's camp. They looked at the gloves the day before, right? 2 pairs of gloves are picked during the glove selection meeting, right? Thank you so much, Donkey Boxing. I appreciate it. So that's one time the gloves were checked. Then the second time the gloves are checked is in the locker room before the fight when the fighters' hands are getting wrapped. JD's was there as well as a commission member, right? That's the second time the gloves were checked. Okay? Then the gloves are checked the third time when they both enter the ring and the referee grabs their gloves and squeezes their gloves, grabs their gloves and inspects their gloves. That's a third time. And then at the end of the fight, right, the gloves and the wraps are turned over to the commission and they're inspected a fourth time. So the gloves were inspected 4 times, right? So you need to tell me after being inspected 4 times, right? All of a sudden, something was missed after the gloves were inspected 4 times. So I can't believe that theory. So if someone provides me evidence to suggest otherwise, until that gets brought to my attention, I can't change my opinion on that because logic and common sense will not allow me to. So the hero, your hero worship syndrome does not trump my common sense and logic, right? And why would you wait 4 months to go by before you make the claims? If someone doctored the gloves, like right away when there was a discrepancy with Antonio Margarito, Naseem Richardson identified it and pointed it out right away, right? Louis Resto, right? When Billy Collins' dad grabbed Louis Resto's gloves at the end of that fight, he found he discovered there was no padding in that glove. He didn't wait 6 months to make the accusation. He made that accusation right away. So again, what Deontay Wilder did was he took this movement that was created on YouTube and he used it to his advantage. Right? He didn't even come up with these theories himself. Now the suit he came up with, right? But the whole drugging of the water that came up that came out later, right? So once again, you don't like Mark Breland, right? You don't like the way he's training you. You have philosophical differences. You feel as though he took you as far as you can go, right? With him, right? He can't teach you anymore. All right, it's fine. You don't like the fact you stopped the fight. You were in disagreement with that, right? That's fine too. Leave it at that. We're parting ways. But to sit there and assassinate the guy's character and accuse him of something that's criminal, right? Criminal, right? That is taking it a step too far, because you're going to get an adverse finding, right? At the end of the drug, at your post-fight drug test, if there was something in that water, if you ingested a substance that you weren't supposed to ingest, whether it be a Quaalude, a Downer, or anything, right? If that substance was put in your water, it would have showed up in the post-fight drug test, right? Would have. You have the commission drug test, and plus both fighters, right? Because they're fighting for the WBC heavyweight title. If you're ranked in the top 10, or I think it's the top 15, if you're ranked in the top 15 of the WBC, right? If you're a champion, if you're a contender, and you're fighting in the WBC, and it's a WBC sanctioned event, right? Whether you fight for a title or an eliminator or any WBC event, right? And you're in the top 15, you have to enroll in the WBC clean boxing program, which is VADA, meaning you're subjected to random drug testing, right? So all the people who want to say that Tyson Fury is a cheater because he tested positive for nandrolone back in 2015, which was 6 years ago, correct? Actually, 7 years ago. So it was 7 years ago. That's correct. That's correct. But now, if you go on if you on BoxRec, you can see that Tyson Fury is enrolled in the WBC clean boxing program. So he's not only tested by the commission, he is tested, right? He is tested by VADA randomly, right? So he's under a lot of scrutiny, right? So once again, if someone can provide evidence, right? And then you guys make these claims, and you're saying that the commissions are corrupt or the commissions are incompetent. Do you realize what you're actually accusing the commission of doing? You're accusing the commission of committing a criminal act. There's no way possible that a commission would allow themselves to do something like that and put themselves in a situation where their reputation can be destroyed. If that happened under a commission's watch and it was discovered that they knowingly allowed Tyson Fury to enter that ring with doctored gloves in any way, they would never be allowed to sanction a fight again, okay? Heads would roll, right? There'd be a lot of people being charged with a criminal offense, a lot of fines, possible jail time, right? Whoever the commissioner was at that particular time, he would be disgraced, fired, and charged with a criminal offense, and his life would be ruined. Why would any person take that risk? And how would somebody get away with that? Because it's not just one person who's in charge, okay? The commission has a number of people that are there to observe the event, to make sure nothing shady's going on, right? The commission employs multiple people to ensure that the safety of the fighters is first and foremost, right? So for these guys to allow this to go on, to be involved in some type of corruption, where's the payoff? What is the upside for them to do that? What is the upside for that commission to allow Tyson Fury to cheat and put themselves in a situation where their lives would be ruined, right? They'd be disgraced, right? You got a commissioner. It was discovered that he allowed Tyson Fury to enter the ring knowing that the gloves were tampered with, right? he'd be ruined. Like the IBF, Bob Lee was the chairman of the IBF. It was discovered that he took a bribe from Bob Arum for Bob Arum fighters to get ranked. He was he was removed. He was gone. Right. His life. He had criminal charges brought against him. Right. He's disgraced. He's disgraced now. Right. He'll never be allowed to sanction or be part of a sanctioning body for the rest of his life. Right. He was removed. He was removed and disgraced and fired and charged with criminal charges. Right. Which will be on his record for the rest of his life. Anyone can Google Bob Lee, chairman of the IBF, and everybody will know that he took a bribe from Bob Arum, right? He's disgraced for the rest of his life. Why would anybody who's a commissioner subject themselves to that? What's the upside? Someone tell me the upside. Explain to me how the commission would knowingly allow Tyson Fury to enter that ring with doctored gloves, with gloves that were messed with, possible egg weights, possible padding taken out of the glove. What is the upside for the commission to let that be swept under the rug and turn a blind eye to that, right? The gloves were checked 4 times. Bare minimum 4 times the gloves were checked. Right? They were checked twice by team members of Deontay Wilder. Right? So what would be the benefit? Where's the money trail? Where's the evidence, right? Where's the evidence? The glove was flopping. Okay. In the first fight, the glove was flopping, right? The tape was loose around the wrist. It was sliding off his hand. That's fine. All right, whatever. Right? Show me a rule that says when you wrap the tape around the wrist of a glove, it has to be a specific tightness. Show me a rule. Show me a rule. Show me a rule that states you can't bend your wrist back like this. If you show me some rules that state that you can't bend your wrist back like this, that state that the tape around a wrist has to be a certain tightness, I'll concede my point. But you can't. So what we have here is we basically have a controversial storyline, right? That is putting money in the pockets of 78 Sports, Blue Blood Sports, Fred Hawthorne, and Boxing Ego. Those are the 4 biggest. And Fannin Boxing was another one for a while there, but he kind of has fallen off a little bit. So you got all these LDBC channels trying to make it about race, trying to make it about how the black man was treated wrongly, right? Because it puts money in their pockets. These guys are getting exclusives. And Deontay Wilder is only going to talk to these guys because guess what? They're going to gas him up. They're going to gas him up. Deontay Wilder is never going to be interviewed by someone who's going to challenge him. And you don't have to insult the guy. You don't have to be hostile with the guy. You just ask simple questions. Give him the opportunity to explain why he believes what he believes. You don't have to say, oh, Deontay, how could you say, you don't know. Just say, you made a statement about Mark Breland. What made you believe that? What evidence do you have? Did you see him do anything shady? Did it look like he was tampering with the water bottle? You can ask him questions like that. I think that Radio Raheem did a pretty decent job with Malik Scott. I give him credit for that. I don't think Radio Raheem is one of the few, and I have my criticisms about Radio Raheem in the past too, but I think out of all of them, he's shown to be the most objective here, right? He was asking Malik Scott some pretty tough questions, asking him to explain himself, basically saying, well, all these accusations were made. That press conference was the perfect time to address those accusations and provide that proof that you. I mean, those were some really good questions. One question I would have had for Malik Scott was, this is what I would have asked him. If you were in the corner in the second fight and you were faced with a similar situation that Mark Breland was faced with, and it didn't look good for your fighter, would you have stopped the fight in that situation? Regardless of what Deontay Wilder wanted you to do, if you felt that his health was in danger, you being his friend and you caring about him, would you have stopped the fight just as Mark Breland did? I want someone to ask Malik Scott that question, and I want to see how he answers it, right? Because then if he said, no, I wouldn't have stopped it, then my rebuttal would have been, but wouldn't you have felt that there would be blood on your hands if you knowingly allowed that fight to go on with Wilder being in that condition where it appeared that he was no longer able to intelligently defend himself? If something were to happen to him physically, how would you feel knowing you allowed that fight to go on? That would have been the follow-up. That would have been the follow-up. Very polite, not accusatory, right? Not accusatory, not hostile. Very polite questioning. I want someone. Now, someone's probably gonna listen to this. Maybe it's Radio Raheem. Probably won't listen to it, but you know, if he were to listen to it and he wants to ask that question, we can. Then I would love for him to ask it, even though I gave it to him. Ask it, because I want to see what Malik Scott says. Michelle Joy Phelps, right? Ask Malik Scott that question. I want to see what he says. Because if Deontay Wilder is your best friend, like you say, right? Your friends first and foremost, right? What would you have done if you were in Mark Breland's situation? Would you have let that fight go on? Michelle Joy Phelps, Radio Raheem, Marcos Villegas, Kugan Cassius, please, one of you ask that question. Please, respectfully, I'm asking. One of you guys ask that question. I want to hear the answer. I want to hear the answer. I'll be dying to hear the answer to that question. I really would. I really would. You know? So that's the thing. I mean, you know, the internet's forever. And some of the people on here do this full time, right? They're in a different situation than people like myself and others, right? Who have a full-time job. Would I love to do this full-time? Yes. But the problem with doing this full-time is it's like anything else. It's like when you're part of the media, right? You're forced to choose a side. There's no middle ground anymore, right? You have Republican, Democrat, right? You have liberal, conservative, right? You either love Deontay Wilder or you hate Deontay Wilder. There can't be any middle ground, because once you criticize Deontay Wilder, what do they label you as? A hater. The definition of hater is basically, do not say anything critical about someone who is my hero, because it bothers me and it doesn't make me feel good. I need my hero to be flawless. He cannot make any mistakes in life, right? Anything that happens to my hero that is unfavorable, it's not his fault. There's a reason behind it. That's what they want to believe. Why do they want to believe that? Because it makes them feel good. Everybody wants to feel good, right? Everybody needs that instant gratification, right? They need that instant gratification. Sometimes people do things and they're like, wow, you know, it was the heat of the moment, but it made me feel good for that brief 10, 15 minutes. But then they look back at it and they say, wow, I shouldn't have done that because look at the residual effect. Look at the repercussions that I'm dealing with right now because I wanted that instant gratification. And when you get older, you start thinking about things more deeply, right? You start thinking of repercussions, right? Most of us get the knowledge first and the wisdom later, right? As you get older, right? When you're younger, you get knowledge, right? But wisdom is being able to know how to use that knowledge, right? These guys on here, I feel bad for them. I feel bad for them because they may look back at this 5, 10 years later and say to themselves, why did I act that way? Right? Why did I act that way? Right? To sit there and try to explain how somebody's gloves were tampered with after they were inspected 4 times, and to insinuate that a commission right, would be in on it, right? That they would be willing to ruin their reputation, face criminal charges, right? Have their name be destroyed forever, right? Because Bob Lee is done. Google Bob Lee right now, right? Let's Google Bob Lee right now. Let's see what the first thing that comes up. IBF Bob Lee. Watch this. IBF Robert Lee. January 7, 2006, Robert Lee Jr., who served as an aide to his father, was acquitted of all 9 charges against him. The elder Lee could face some prison time on 6 convictions, which included tax evasion, money laundering, and racketeering. Right? That's the first thing. His life is ruined. Right? He was found guilty of money laundering and tax evasion, right? Sentenced to 22 months in prison. So someone's willing to do that, right? Would it, like, someone's willing to do that now? The rise and fall of promoter Bob Lee. IBF founder sentenced to 2 years in prison, right? Fined $25,000. Google him. Right? This is what would happen to anyone. This is what would happen to anyone who was in on it, right? Is that worth it? Is that worth it? Ask yourself that. H, cook these dudes for me, please.
Yo, what's good? Shout out to Beeb. How you doing, my brother?
I'm doing great, man. I'm doing great.
For sure. Yeah, man, it's unfortunate that Deontay Wilder gets to use every excuse in the book for why he lost. You know, this guy made every excuse possible, Beeb, from using a race card to saying the suit was too heavy. And the suit, I mean, I guess that excuse didn't work. So now it's time to use, the Spike Water excuse. Let's blame Mark Breland. This guy is out of his mind right now. He's talking about he was on Juju juice. I mean, I never heard of Juju. I don't know what that is, but he said he was on some Juju, whatever that means, you know. So, and then when he comes to the press conference, Beeb, he has nothing to say. He's the same person that said, speak it, receive it, believe it. He's talking about speaking things into existence. Why you didn't speak at the press conference, Wilder? I mean, I'm definitely confused about what's going on with him. The guy walking around with headphones on, trying to ignore the questions. He's trying to ignore Tyson Fury. And he's supposed to be the baddest man on the planet, Beeb. I don't see the confidence anymore. I think the confidence is gone. Now, I think he's also embarrassed, Beeb. He's embarrassed. He's walking around, with his head down. Usually Deontay Wilder is the loudest guy in the room. He does the most talking. And now he's silent. It's obviously a bad look, Beeb, to be honest. I'm disappointed in Deontay Wilder. Once he lost a fight, we saw his true character. what type of person he really is. You know, Tyson Fury, his confidence is rising. Now, I heard Sugar Hill talking about how Tyson Fury has developed one punch knockout power. He's learned how to sit down on his punches. He has learned the techniques on how to knock people out. And I think this third fight is going to be worse for Deontay Wilder, man. You know, honestly, you know, Malik Scott, his new trainer. Malik Scott got his eardrum busted by Tyson Fury. It's incredible, Beep. Deontay Wilder and his trainer both got their ass beat by Tyson Fury. This is amazing. You know what I mean? It's like it's crazy that Deontay Wilder, he chose Malik Scott to do all the talking for him at the press conference, and Malik Scott got embarrassed by Tyson Fury. You know, so man, I just can't wait for this fight. I believe it's about 5 weeks away, and you know, I'm looking forward to Tyson Fury going in there and dominating Deontay Wilder. You know, if Tyson Fury cheated, B, why Deontay Wilder didn't say nothing about it in front of the world at the press conference in front of Tyson Fury? Why he didn't call him out? He didn't keep the same energy, B. You know, that's how I know he's a liar and everything was some bullshit, because he didn't want to talk about it. He didn't want to answer any questions. So it just makes him look bad. It shows what type of character he has. He only wants to do interviews with people like Ellie Setback, who's gonna, you know, be a yes man. Fred, who's his close friend. Fred is just, you know, Fred is gonna look out for him and tell him everything he wants to hear. Wilder, he's a joke. He's a joke. There's no other way I can put it.
Fred calls Deontay Wilder a king. Says he's our king. He's my king, right? Fred, I'll be 52 in December. I think Fred's in his mid 40s, if I'm not mistaken, or you know, mid to early 40s. This is a grown man who has a wife and a child, right? Who supposedly is doing very well financially, right? And this is a man who's worshiping another man, or at least he's putting it out there that he's worshiping another man. You know, some of this stuff is so ridiculous by the YouTubers as well as Deontay Wilder that you have to almost think that it's all an act. It's all a sham, right? It's all just to make the event big and just to create this big controversy and to put out this narrative just to get attention. You know, so part of me wants to say that, but a lot of these guys a lot of these people who follow these channels, I think that they've been bamboozled. They've been convinced of this. And these guys don't care. Blue Blood Sports, Boxing Ego, Fred Hawthorne, right? 78 Sports TV. All of these guys, they don't care because they love getting their super chats. They love getting their ad revenue, right? Because these guys will pay them to be told what they want to hear because it makes them feel good. And I like money just as much as the next guy, but at what point do you sell yourself like that? Because at what point do you make yourself look that badly, right? Just to make it just so you can get money, right? It just makes no sense. A lot of this stuff just goes against logic. So the ridiculousness of it is just bizarre. It's astonishing. It's intriguing to me, the level that some of these guys will go to, right? Just so they can make some money. I think it's disgraceful.
It is, you know, misleading, you know, like people that don't know. That's what's going on. They're misleading the weak. People like innocent women that just follow channels that don't know about boxing. You're talking about casual fans that really don't know much, and you can easily manipulate people and brainwash people, you know, and to believe in this bullshit. And that's what they're doing, bro. So many women that I know that are subscribed to these channels, and they actually believe it. You know, believe the bullshit that they hear. And it's unfortunate, Beep, that, you know, that this is going on. You know, I believe the only people that believes the Deontay Wilder bullshit are, you know, certain fans on YouTube, certain channels that's pushing these false narratives and using race to push their bullshit, man. It's sad, but it's true. This type of stuff been going on for a very long time in the world, B. People always use race to to push their bullshit and try to manipulate people. I know that Don King, he actually did that with certain fighters. He used the fact that he was black to get certain fighters and cheat them out their money. That's what he did with Zab Judah. He did it. Mike Tyson, he talked about it. People use race, to get over on people, man. And it's definitely unfortunate, but that's the reality of this.
Yeah, that's what it is, man. That's what it basically is, man. So I don't know, bro. I think come July 24th, the reality will come to light. I think at the end of the day, what are these guys gonna say if Tyson Fury knocks out Deontay Wilder again? What are they gonna do? Who's gonna be their new hero, right? What are they gonna do? Say that Fury cheated again? What is the end game here? How does this all end when it's all said and done, right? What are these people gonna do, right? When and if Deontay Wilder loses again, their lives will be over.
That's crazy, man. That'd be sad,
I'm not saying they're gonna die or they're gonna kill themselves, but this false narrative will all be over, and then they have to go back to being that person that they're trying to not be. Like that, the wool will come will be removed over everybody's eyes, and the BS will end. So all this false BS and all this the projection of Deontay Wilder being a hero, they won't be able to do that anymore. Or they can try to do it, but again, they'll lose even more and more credibility if they try to do that.
They'll find another excuse. They'll find something, trust me, not to give Tyson Fury his credit, man. They'll find something. If Fury doesn't knock him out, they'll say, oh, the gloves weren't loaded this time. They'll make something up, man. They do it every time, B. So it is what it is. But, these guys are the only ones that actually believe in this nonsense. There's so many people in the world, but it's just a small community on YouTube that believes this nonsense. But the real people, the majority of the people, they don't believe that bullshit. And that's why Deontay Wilder wasn't answering questions. Now, when Deontay Wilder is around 78 Sports, he's doing interviews, and he's very confident. He does a lot of talking. When he's around Ali Sebag and Fred, he'll do a lot of talking. But when you got people like yourself, Beeb, or people like Radio Raheem around, he doesn't want to talk. When you got people like Dan Raphael, whoever, he doesn't want to talk, man. He's picking and choosing who he's talking to. He's avoiding the real media. Deontay Wilder at this point, like I said, is a joke, man. And I'm looking forward to Tyson Fury, destroying him once and for all, and putting an end to this nonsense. So I just can't wait, B. I want to ask you, what do you think about the fights tonight? You got Jaime Munguia fighting on DAZN. Also, you got Blair Cobbs on the undercard. Christian Kalkruf, who's a cruiserweight prospect, very talented young fighter. Perhaps he can move up to heavyweight. That's on the DAZN card. On Showtime, you got Jamal Charlo, middleweight champion. Also, you got Angelo Leo on the undercard. And on the top rank, you have Inoue. So I want to ask you, which fight would you be watching? Would you be watching Inoue this Saturday night, or are you going to watch Jamal Charlo?
I like the Inoue fight, but I kind of like that DAZN undercard. I like the Gabe Rosado fight on there. I like the undercard at the DAZN, but I like the Inoue main event because Inoue, I think, will knock out his opponent quick. But Inoue is probably the most exciting fighter who's fighting this weekend. All the fights I believe are going to end in knockout. They're all going to be one-sided. These are all mismatches, but I think Inoue brings the most entertainment value out of all these guys. And I think that's the one I'm going to be watching. I'll have to go back and watch the other events later, but I'm going to be tuning in on to Inoue because we always don't get the opportunity to see Inoue as much as we do the other guys anyway. So I want to watch Inoue, man, because he's making a lot of noise. Everyone's putting him on the pound for pound list, so I'll be following him.
And what do you think about Inoue as a fighter? I believe he only has 20 fights. He's ranked very high on the pound for pound list. I think his best win is Nonito Donaire. I mean, do you think Inoue is actually the real deal? Do you feel like he really deserves the praise that he's?
I think that he's a good fighter. He's won titles in multiple divisions. He can punch, but he's shown some deficiencies defensively. Now, is his offense so strong and good enough that his offense will make up for those defensive liabilities? Nonito Donaire, took him life and death, basically, right? Nonito Donaire lost a close decision. So I'd like to see a rematch, but am I 100% sold on this guy right now? No, but one thing is definitely certain. He piques my interest. He makes me want to watch him again. And I think he has that quality about him. So whether he's as good as people say he is, because there's always going to be opinions. Everyone's going to put someone higher than maybe another guy would, right? The Golovkin fans thought, some of them Golovkin fans were saying that he was one of the best middleweights of all time. Everyone's going to have a different opinion on it. So if you're asking my opinion on it, do I think he's a pound for pound guy right now? I'm not really sure he's as good as everyone is saying he is. I know he definitely is good. He definitely has talent. But Nonito Donaire did show that he has weaknesses that may be exploited down the road.
Okay, and as far as the PBC card, headlined by Jermall Charlo, who's most people got as the best middleweight in the world right now. What do you think about Charlo versus Montiel, and what's next for Charlo? Now, if you look at the middleweight division, you got Charlo is the WBC champion, Demetrius Andrade is the champion of the WBO, and you got Triple G, who's the IBF champion. What do you think about the middleweight division, and who is your top dog right now? Who would you say is the number one champion?
I think Charlo's number one guy based off of just the eye test. I think his style would be very troublesome for guys like Andrade, guys like Golovkin, because this is a guy who can box as well as punch. I think he's very quick with his hands and his feet. I think he really understands range. He really knows how to keep guys at the end of his punches. I think he's physically strong enough to be able to handle guys on the inside. I thought that fight with Derevyanchenko really showed that he had some grittiness as well as boxing skills, right? So sometimes the fighter needs that tough fight just to let him know that he can get through the tough times. He can get through a rough and tumble, uncomfortable, gritty fight sometimes. So the way he handled Derevyanchenko, I feel as though he's very well equipped and very well rounded enough to beat just about everybody in that division. What I'd love to see him fight next, or who I'd love to see him fight next, is Golovkin or Andrade. I think that these guys got to fight each other at some point. So you got Golovkin fighting Murata. Andrade is supposed to fight Chris Eubank Jr. They're talking about that happening. So if everybody wins their next fight, then I'd love to see Charlo versus Andrade or Charlo versus Golovkin. I think that makes the most sense. But just off the eye test, I think Charlo is the best. Charlo still has to go out there and fight the fights. You can argue, obviously, that Golovkin probably has a better resume than Charlo, but he is at the tail end. He's starting to show some slippage, and I think Charlo is still in his prime, and he probably can get even better and even sharper, right? Andrade's no spring chicken either, right? So I think Charlo's the guy with the most upside right now in the middleweight division, and I think he'll be the man when it's all said and done. That is if Canelo, obviously Canelo's probably, if they do fight, then Charlo would have to go up to 168. So, but as far as 160 goes, I think Charlo's the man, clearly.
Yeah, I agree with that. At one point I thought Andrade was the best one. I thought Demetrius Andrade, he had the best skills. I thought he was the best boxer. But after watching Demetrius Andrade's last performance against Liam Williams, it looks like he lost a step. He doesn't look like the same fighter, and I think Charlo is getting better. So right now, as of today, I would have Charlo number one above Demetrius Andrade at this moment. What do you think about Charlo's star power? How do you feel like his star been rising since he's been
I think social media has helped a lot of these young boxers. And I think that people on, they all have YouTube channels now. They're very active on Instagram and Twitter, what have you. I like the fact that PBC does these interviews and showcases these young guys and really sits down with them and does these in-depth interviews. But one problem I have is I would love to see these guys fight on Fox more, right? Because everybody and their brother has Fox. Not everybody has Showtime. Not everybody has, um, you know, the ability or the luxury of buying pay-per-views, right? So do what they did with Teofimo Lopez and Vasil Lomachenko. They put that fight on ESPN, and 4 million people were able to view that, right? So you don't just force fighters to become pay-per-view stars. You don't force the issue, right? Let them develop. So put them on Fox and put them in front of that audience, right? Have them do more interviews on some of these mainstream shows like Undisputed or First Take, right? Try to build these guys off of the basic television. Like back in the day when Leonard and Duran and Hagler were fighting, right? Leonard used to be on ABC Sports, like almost all the time. All his fights were on ABC Sports. So I think they have an opportunity to really showcase a lot of these fighters, particularly the Charlo brothers, by just putting them on Fox. If I was Al Heyman, I'd be like, I'd be saying, okay, yeah, we can put you on pay-per-view, you can get some back end money, but will you get the audience that you'll be getting, right? If you're on Fox, because like I said, anyone that has a television set can get Fox. You don't need to even have a cable box to get Fox, right? So I think that in terms of being able to be in front of the most eyeballs, that would be the route that I would go down. So I would put these guys on regular Fox and just try to really showcase them to casual fans, because this pay-per-view thing, I think, is going to hurt them in the long run. Because what's better, being able to fight in front of millions of people, 3-4 million people, right? Prime time, or having a pay-per-view that sells 150,000, 200,000 buys, right? Do the math. So I think that PBC is making a mistake by putting on so many pay-per-views and showcasing these young fighters on pay-per-view right now. I'm not in agreement with it. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with that. I feel like ESPN is doing a great job with boxing right now. And also, when PBC put their fights on Fox, like they did Caleb Plant, his last fight, it did, I believe, over 1 million views. So it's real good for the sport. Shout out to Maestro. What's good?
How's it going, H Money?
I'm
What's up,
good,
Maestro?
bro.
Absolutely. Good morning.
Oh, he dropped off. I'll put the link back in there. Probably internet's a little shaky. I'll put the link back in there.
I love what ESPN is doing with the sport of boxing. They're get so many views, so many people are watching these fights, and it's great for the sport, man. It's easy for everybody to watch these fights, and I think ESPN, that they're doing the best job as far as building up prospects, the way they did with Teofimo Lopez, the job they're doing with Xander Zayas and Jared Anderson, the real big baby. They're doing a great job building up these prospects. Even Shakur Stevenson, they're doing I think a tremendous job. What about you?
Well, I like that. You know, I'd rather see these guys on the basic cable or the, you know, the regular, you know, the network television stations, right? I'd rather see them on those outlets more so than pay-per-view. I think they're trying to push these guys on pay-per-view too quick. So I like that. I really do like that. That's more of the route that I would go down, or that's more of the route that I would use in the situation with these young guys.
Let me ask you something, Joe. Is Teofimo Lopez Jr. a pay-per-view fighter?
No, absolutely not. In my opinion,
I
no.
agree.
It's a mistake.
I agree.
It's a
Big mistake.
Setting him up for failure. Setting him up for failure, in my opinion. Ride off that momentum, right? Ride off that momentum. But hopefully this is a one-off, and then he goes back to ESPN, and he allows Top Rank to showcase him on ESPN, and hopefully there's no bad blood. Hopefully that Bob Arum, I mean they restructured the deal. It appears as though they're going to pay him more money, so hopefully they're going to really get behind him. Like I said, I think from 130 to 140, I think Top Rank's got the best comp. So anyone in that area, you know, anyone fighting in that vicinity of weight classes, they need to stick with Top Rank. So this is a strategic move, right? They need to sit down and all get on the same page. And you know, if they have issues with each other, they need to air it out behind closed doors and not put everything out there and air out their dirty laundry, like what's been going on, because it's a bad look. It's not helpful, right? So Teofimo Lopez needs to bite the bullet and use Top Rank to get him the fights that he needs, and then eventually he can branch out and do whatever he wants. He can become a free agent once he becomes established. Don't try to put the cart before the horse. And a lot of these young fighters seem to me, and again, I'm not a manager, I'm not in their shoes, I'm not I'm not in the rooms when these contracts are being negotiated, but it just makes no sense that they're doing it backwards. Like back in the day, you would build a guy on network television and then put him on pay-per-view. You don't put him on pay-per-view without showcasing him on network television. Putting him on the outlets that will give him more visibility, like putting these guys on Fox, putting these guys on ESPN. And then like Bob is smart like that. Like Top Rank is smart like that. They know how to build the young guys, right? So they're going to put them on ESPN. They're going to put them on ESPN Plus, whatever, before putting them on pay-per-view, because they want to let the most amount of eyeballs get these, you know, be able to see these guys fight. And then you put them on pay-per-view after that. Build them up, build them up. Don't start them from the top and then let them fall back down to the bottom. Let them start at the bottom and go to the top, so that's my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. But the thing that's been interesting to me is that I've heard multiple times, both from Teofimo Jr. and Sr., that from this day forward, they're only pay-per-view fighters.
Yeah.
And what's interesting to me is that everything was indicating that this pay-per-view was about to flop. And this COVID thing, let's say it's legitimate. I don't know, to be honest. Maybe I shouldn't say I don't know, but I honestly don't know. It's still not a good look, because we know that it wasn't selling well. We know that it wasn't going to do well on pay-per-view. And I think all they're really doing here is delaying the truth coming out, which is that the young man is still a very good fighter. He's a very young man still, though, in professional boxing, and he's nowhere near a pay-per-view fighter yet. And even Oscar in his prime, when he wasn't fighting the big pay-per-view fight, between fights like with Steve Forbes and other guys, he was fighting on regular HBO.
Yeah. But even by postponing this event and putting it in August, it's going to be going up against the Errol Spence pay-per-view with Manny Pacquiao, which is going to be the following week, I think, on the 21st, right? So when you're putting boxing fans in a situation where they have to choose between the two events, obviously people are going to buy the Pacquiao Spence event, right? So even by moving the date, I think it puts them in an even worse situation. It's going to, like you said, all it's doing is delaying the agony, right? You're delaying the agony of the potential failure. Oh, well, Beeb, you're hating. Nah, I'm just using logic here. No one's talking about the fight, really, right? Casual fans do not know what Triller is, really, right? Casual fans don't really know Teofimo Lopez. Maybe some of them do, but not enough of them where he could carry a pay-per-view, especially not against a guy like George Kambosos, like who no one really knows. And this is not to throw shade on anyone. This is just dealing with the reality of the situation, you know. And once you start believing you're something you're not, and you detach yourself from reality, again, like a lot of people do not have the ability to self-reflect. People forget all the times that Floyd was on network television, right? They forget the times when Floyd was on HBO. Floyd didn't just jump on pay-per-view. It took Floyd 10 years. 10 years to go to get to pay-per-view, right? 10 years, really.
10 years in stars like Arturo Gotti and Oscar De La Hoya, not guys like George Kambosos Jr.
Yeah, so I think these guys need to take, everyone wants to beat Floyd Mayweather. And again, I hate to quote Floyd Mayweather because I'm not a huge fan of the person, but he is right when he says this. He goes, everybody wants to be Floyd Mayweather, but nobody wants to do what Floyd Mayweather did to get where he was, to get to that point of being the star. No one wants to put in the work like I did. No one wants to do what I did to get to that point. Everybody wants to just jump ahead of the line and not earn it, right? So that's the problem. So Teofimo Lopez seems to me right now to be kind of like seems like he's gone Hollywood right now, and I like the guy. It was a great win, but there's still a lot more to do. You're only 23 years old right now. This this was your first big win, right? Savor the moment. That's great, but there's still a lot more to do. Stay humble, stay focused. I hope he's doing that because it seems like he went Hollywood. They're talking about, oh, we got Jennifer Lopez here, blah, 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 blah. That doesn't mean anything. You still got to go out there and fight the fight, bro.
Yeah, absolutely. And the funny thing is, the ironic thing, you say that the casual fans don't know what Triller is. I'll be honest with you. I talk to a lot of hardcore fans. You're one of them. H Money's one of them. Does any of us have the Triller app on our phones?
No, I'm not.
Do we use Triller?
No,
but do we even have the app? Is what I'm saying.
No,
I have the Twitter app. You know what I mean? Obviously, I have the YouTube app. I got the DAZN app. I got the ESPN app. I don't have the Triller app, and I'm a hardcore fan.
Yeah,
so
I'm not buying it.
And the interesting thing to me is they admitted that he's not a pay-per-view fighter when they jumped off the date because of Floyd and Logan Paul. And had it been on DAZN, it probably would have gone through. It probably would have had people watch the fight. Same if it was on ESPN that Saturday. But they got bumped, and now they're getting bumped again. So they're only delaying it. Let me ask you something different, though, Joe, because this is what I wanted to jump on about initially to ask you about. All these channels, right, that have been capping for Deontay this whole time. A lot of these channels, though, actually legitimately started off like doing, I would say, real like boxing talk, real analysis, but then went down this wormhole, right? Is it possible to come out of this wormhole once Fury whoops Wilder's ass, which is what I think is going to happen? Because to me, you've already ruined all credibility. You've already shown yourself for what you are. Can you go back and be essentially someone who gives an honest opinion and shares that opinion with fight fans that want to hear real analysis? That was my question for you.
They can go back to that, but they won't go back to that because a lot of these guys, they got used to the money, right? They got used to the attention. They know unfortunately, right? You have to be controversial on here. You have to say outlandish things to really get a lot of subscribers and get a lot of attention. You can say that's hating if you want, but it's like anything else in life, right? You have the Democrats and the Republicans, and the independents are the minority. Like we're the independents, right? And you have the Democrats and the Republicans on here, right? You have the diehard AJ fans, and you got the diehard Wilder fans, right? You have the Top Rank side, and you have the PBC side, or you have the PBC side against everyone else, and then you have the Top Rank and DAZN side against PBC, right? If you're in the middle, you're the minority. And the channels that are in the middle, let's just be real about it. We have the least amount of subscribers, right? Because we don't subscribe to a group, right? We don't subscribe to a group. So by being just like in politics, I hate to make that comparison, but I think it's pretty applicable here. The
Those are good
independents,
comparison.
yeah, the independents are the smallest political group, right? They're
Yeah,
growing,
yeah.
they're growing, but most of the country is Democrat, right? And then Republican is second, and independents are a distant third, right? You and I are both registered independents, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, you asked me earlier, like, how much would it take to sell myself, right?
Yeah. Well,
I'll be honest. I could probably do it for a short period of time, right? And take the money and then just go back to being normal and say, hey, I got the money now, and take that money and invest it into what I really want to be. So I could do it,
Yeah.
like maybe I could do it, right? And then say, well, I was just kidding. I was just playing a character. That's not what I really believe, right? That was just basically like parody. Then I would take the money and go back to being normal again. That's what
I hear you.
Right?
Here's my thing with I hear you. Here's my thing with a lot of these channels. Up until now, it was clear that you had your fanboy channels, guys like Ellie Setback, where I heard H Money mentioned earlier, right? But I think these other channels, like you've mentioned, Fanon Boxing, Blue Blood, I could go on and on with the names. You all know who they are. They've gone 2 or 3 or 10 steps further than that by essentially making the claims about spiked water, egg weights. By the way, H Money, when he was saying juju, he's talking about like West African mysticism, where you're essentially casting a spell on somebody. That's what juju means. That's another reason I came on to clarify that. So he's like, maybe some dust was sprayed on him, or he drank some juice that was, mystically spiked or whatever. But once you start capping that hard, like, it's to a next level than Ellie Setback. Like, once he loses and all of those reasons are gone, all of those reasons that you were spreading, I cannot see how you can continue to survive, like, by doing that. Like, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe the people that watch those channels are so, brainwashed and mind fucked that they'll just continue to absorb that kind of shit.
Before I let John get in, I'm going to let John get in, but I want to make one quick statement. And again, this is going to be perceived as hating, but I'm going to say it. For a brief second, for about, I want to say 3 minutes, 3 to 5 minutes. I actually did watch Blue Blood's video yesterday, right? He did a video about Deontay Wilder, something about Deontay Wilder, right? And he was getting super chats. One guy gave him $100. One guy gave him $50. Another guy gave him $20. So in about 5 minutes, the dude made about $170 in 5 minutes. Hey, my hat goes off to you, man. That's pretty cool, man. You made $170 in 5 minutes. That's cool. Great. But when I read the comments of the super chats, one guy's like, yeah, man, I was going through some problems, but I got my shit together. So now I'm able to give you $20, man, because you represent us. Like, so these guys are giving them money, like, and saying things like that they're putting, it's almost like the hero worship syndrome of the YouTube channels too, because they're connecting the YouTube channels and putting them on the same level as the fighter. So if you're looking at Deontay Wilder as a hero, then these channels are a hero too, because they're actually helping Deontay Wilder. And then they make statements like, oh, thanks for putting out the truth. Like, what truth are you putting out there? You're putting out propaganda. You're putting out. So it's going to be hard for these channels to stop doing what they're doing if they're making $170 in 5 minutes. Now, you call me a hater if you want, but these guys are caping for dollars. There's no question about it. John, go ahead, man.
Well, there's a couple of things that I don't really understand. First of all, I've got to pull you up because you ignore the fact that there's pro Fury channels as well. It's not just AJ, pro Wilder, pro Fury. However, the pro Wilder channels go so much further than any other group. It's ridiculous. But what I don't understand is Maestro's asking a legitimate question of how can they ever come back. But my question is more, what will they do when Wilder finishes? Because there's no clear successor. There isn't anybody who's actually going to do the crazy stuff that Wilder does to try and stand for some sort of movement. Now, they've monetized racism in America for their own ends, which is actually quite despicable. But I don't think another boxer is going to come forward and represent that for them again. And Wilder's what, 36?
He's going to be 36.
Yeah, I mean, look at Charlo. Charlo doesn't want anything to do with it. Anytime they try to bring him into the loop, he gives them the Heisman. He gives them the stiff arm. He don't want to touch that.
I'm gonna, John asked a very legitimate question, and I'm gonna answer it because I already see the blueprint unfolding before my very eyes. John asked, will there be anyone that is controversial as Wilder? Will there be anyone who plays that role to the extent that Wilder does? No. But I'm already telling you who the next guy is. It's Errol Spence. Because Errol Spence is coming out saying things like, I can't go against my countrymen. I'm going to support Wilder, blah, blah, blah. So I saw Errol Spence on Fred's channel, Fred Hawthorne's channel, Barbershop Conversations the other day. And they were both just gassing Wilder up. So what the next thing is going to be Errol Spence, how he's the guy who we need to get behind now. And what they're going to do, just like they did with Anthony Joshua, they put up, I'm going to say this, and people are going to say, Beeps, you have no right to say this, but they elevated one black man and at the expense of another black man. So they big upped Wilder, but they really insulted Anthony Joshua, right? So what you're doing is you're elevating one black man, but you're putting down another black man, right? So you're subtracting from one black man to add to another black man, right? So they're going to do that. They're going to do that same thing with Errol Spence and Terrence Crawford. Like Crawford's going to be the sellout, right? He's going to be the guy who follows Bob Arum. Bob Arum is the evil white promoter, right? And then you got Spence. This is the storyline. I'm already unveiling this, and I'm actually helping these guys, right? So then you got just like Joe Frazier, Muhammad Ali, how Joe Frazier at that time was the hero, and Ali was the guy who was anti-American because he wouldn't go to Vietnam or whatever for that brief period of time, right? So the new narrative is going to be Errol Spence is our man and Terrence Crawford's the sellout. So we need to get behind Errol Spence, right? And they're going to be like, oh, the big fight's not happening because Crawford signed with the evil white man, and the evil white man only wants in-house fights. The evil white man's blocking this fight just like he blocked Mayweather Pacquiao, right? That's going to be the new narrative. That's the new storyline, and that'll probably help them out too. It may not be as big as the Deontay Wilder thing, but it'll be enough to get them the super chats and the views that they need because Errol Spence, he's a popular guy too. So he's going to be the new hero, in my opinion. He's going to fill the new Wilder void, in my opinion.
Man, that was a great breakdown, Beef.
Yeah, it was.
You see, I've been pushing this narrative already, but there's a few problems that they're going to encounter with this because
oh yeah,
damaged goods. And what happens if he loses to Pacquiao?
If he loses to, here's the thing, and I'm going to say this, and this is my opinion. This is not fact. If Pacquiao goes the distance and the scores are red, okay, so-and-so scores it 116 and 112. So-and-so scores it 116 and 112, 115 and 113, and still champion Errol Spence, right? If the scorecards are red at the end of the fight like that, Pacquiao wins. He wins, in my opinion.
100%.
Sort of like Logan Paul won by going the 8. If Pacquiao finishes that fight and is remotely competitive, he wins.
Still a great way to end your career.
Yeah. If Spence does not knock Pacquiao out or does not beat him up and dominate him in that fight, it's going to be a financial win for him without question. But I don't think it's going to elevate him because then you know what happens? Then Crawford could say, well, you know what? You struggle with a 42-year-old Pacquiao. what are you going to do against me? Right? What are you going to do against me? So even if Spence wins, but doesn't win impressively, does not dominate, I think it will hurt him, in my opinion.
Check this though, Joe. Directly with what John was saying about what will they do, what will happen if Pacquiao wins. Well, he lied before, he cheated before, like he was on PEDs.
Yeah.
So, he's obviously on PEDs, and look at all of these racist channels. They want the Asian man to win. It's all conspiracy. It's all like that is probably where I see these channels taking shit, unfortunately.
Even though that VADA is going to be involved in the testing because Spence is a WBC champion, right?
Who runs VADA? The white man.
Yeah,
I want to know
Go
more
ahead,
about it. I've been trying to find out about VADA testing for this fight quite extensively, and there seems to be very, very limited information about it at this point.
Yeah, I'm hearing mixed information. I was told that there is VADA, but then what's his name? Who's the guy there? Who's that guy? The PED guy that I'm trying to think of his name. He came out. The guy that got busted for steroids.
Jean Pascal?
No. You're talking about Victor Conte?
Yeah, Victor Conte. Victor Conte came out and said that there's no VADA for this fight. And then Sean Gibbons, the manager of Pacquiao, said that there is. So there's a debate there. So what the channels are going to do if Pacquiao wins is they're going to say, oh yeah, there was no VADA, and then people are going to say, well, Sean Gibbons said there was, but everyone's going to they're going to look for the confirmation bias of Victor Conte, and they're going to screenshot all the quotes they're going to screenshot his quotes when he was battling Sean Gibbons on Twitter, questioning whether or not there was VADA here for this fight or not. And then what's going to happen is they're going to use that as a defense for if Pacquiao wins or if Pacquiao looks good and Spence doesn't. That's what's going to happen. The narratives are already laid out there.
But what if there is no VADA? And I think they're both suspicious, to be honest with you, the pair of them. I have suspicions about both of them using PEDs.
I do too.
What if there's no VADA and Manny actually knocks him out? Where does Spence go from there?
It's a bad look if there's no VADA. I'll be honest with you. If you let me just do one thing real quick, and I hate to do this on while we're online because it's going to be a little bit of a delay. Let's look and see if either Pacquiao or Spence is enrolled in the WBC clean boxing program.
I don't have my laptop, Joe, but one thing I'd also like to look up. I'm actually on the phone. I'm not at home. I'm out of town.
So Pacquiao, I'm sorry to cut you off.
Yeah.
It says enrollments here for Pacquiao on BoxRec. He was enrolled Voluntary Anti-Doping Association, VADA, CBP Pro Boxer. He even has the ID number. He was enrolled on March 1st, 2022. And his VADA Anti-Doping Association number is ID 6129. So Manny Pacquiao is enrolled in VADA right now
until 2022, because we're not in 2022 yet. So
yeah, it expires. It expires in 2022. Yeah.
All right, so that's good, because my question for all of the people that would accuse Manny of being on PEDs, what they would say is, yeah, well, he cycled off and then they announced the fight. So I was going to ask you when they announced the fight, but if he was already on VADA, then he's already on VADA.
Errol Spence has the same information. He's enrolled in VADA, and his expires March 1st, 2022, and his ID number is 629465. So I'm not doxing these guys. This is on the internet. Anyone can access this information. So they're both enrolled in VADA.
There you go.
So that answers the question. Now, what's going to happen now is the validity of VADA is going to be called into question, just like the validity of USADA was called into question with Floyd. But USADA did have a checkered past. They have a different what VADA does is they have what's called a carbon isotope test. What USADA did was they would check for the testosterone to epitestosterone ratio. And I think in Vegas, you were allowed to be 4-to-1. In most of the other states, you're allowed to be 3-to-1, meaning you could have a 3-to-1 ratio, 3-to-1 testosterone to 1 epitestosterone ratio. the thing on Floyd was what they used to say. What Floyd used to do was he used to increase his epitestosterone so the ratio would not be. So he'd still have a high level of testosterone in his system, but he would also have a high level of epitestosterone to counteract that and make the ratio balance out. What VADA does is they do what's called a carbon isotope test. So they're actually looking for synthetic forms of testosterone. And that's how they caught Lamont Peterson. They said he had that pellet or whatever. So USADA, from what I know, from what I was told, from the research I did, does the testosterone to epitestosterone ratio to determine if someone, has an adverse finding, whereas VADA is using the carbon isotope test. So that's the difference there. So I don't know what the criticism of, what VADA is going to be, is because now what people are going to say is like Maestro said, well, VADA only tests them once the fight is signed, right? So they don't know what they're doing during the year when they're not scheduled to fight. They only test them when the training camp begins, right? Or maybe a week or two before the training camp starts. So it's not true Olympic style testing, because true Olympic style testing is 24/7. I don't think there is a true 24/7 in boxing right now, to my knowledge. That's what I was told.
There is. The closest thing is the BBOC in England. That's the closest thing. They do out of competition all the time.
Oh, okay. So I know in the United States. Go ahead, John.
There's also Adam's whereabouts, but that's for Olympic athletes in general.
Yeah.
So Anthony Joshua's been signed up to before he was ever a professional, and he's still signed up to it. Okay. I wouldn't be surprised if what's the French guy who won the Olympics in 2016? He got done.
Tony
Yoka.
Yoka, yeah.
He got into trouble for not providing his whereabouts in between competitions. When he had a bit of a drug scandal, it was actually about not providing his whereabouts when he was training so that he could be available for testing. He didn't actually fail a test. He missed tests that they were trying to do. So I think a lot of the Olympians are subjected to this, particularly if they won a gold medal, but it's not widespread.
Beeb, I gotta go. Appreciate you. Thank you for having me.
I'll talk to you. I'll talk to you.
Shout out to everybody on the panel. Maestro.
Salute, H Money.
Thank you.
No doubt, B.
All right. Peace out, John. Thanks. Peace out.
Yeah. So I always believe, in my opinion, there's going to be loopholes in any of these drug testing protocols, really, when you think about it. And when a lot of times these guys do get busted, what is the result always come out as? Oh, there was trace amounts. So I think a lot of guys possibly, and this is again my opinion, I think a lot of guys believe that they could have a substance in their system, and eventually, it'll certain drugs don't have a long half-life. Like the drug clenbuterol doesn't really stay in a fighter system. Generally, it's out of there in like 36 to 48 hours, right? So maybe they miscalculated. They thought that before the testing, before they were going to get tested, that maybe it would be out of their system. Maybe they microdose, split up the doses and make them small enough so it'll be out of the system before the testing, before they get tested. So in my opinion, I suspect a lot of these guys are doing things. It's just my opinion at this level. But when they do get caught, it's usually a miscalculation of, maybe they thought that the substance would be out of the system in time before they got tested, or they microdosed in an effort to get it out of the system quick enough so they would pass the test. So I believe that. That's just my theory. Can I prove it? No, but I look at the circumstantial evidence. The circumstantial evidence tells me that every time these guys do test positive, it's always for trace amounts. Why is that? That's just my question. No, Paul, go ahead, brother. What you got?
Good morning, everybody. B, real quick, while you're on the subject, I mean, what's your theory on how Canelo was caught using PDs? Because we know he did get caught during the offseason when he was even in training camp and all that, and it was clenbuterol, according to them.
My theory on that is he took the clenbuterol. In my opinion, I think he either microdosed it, or he took enough where he thought that it would clear his system before he was going to get tested. I think he probably was taking it before training camp actually started, and there was trace amounts left in there from before the training camp started. And I think either he miscalculated, thinking it would be out of his system in time for the test, or he microdosed to have it out of his system in a timely manner so he could pass the test. That's my opinion. I don't think that there's enough clenbuterol in meat, right, where it's gonna stay in your system that long, really, because again, when you digest the meat, right, it's gonna exit your system within 24 to 36 hours, right?
What if he had a steak? What if he had a steak though within that time period before the fight?
Possible.
I mean, before the test, not the fight.
Possible, but in my opinion, improbable.
I always wanted to ask too, like somebody that wanted to talk about this is why clenbuterol out of all these drugs.
I'll explain why.
There's an array of undetectable drugs that these guys could choose from. Why clenbuterol and why in the off season?
Because clenbuterol doesn't have a long shelf life. It's in and out quickly. And clenbuterol, there's a misconception about clenbuterol because bodybuilders take it to burn fat and they take it for aesthetic purposes, right? But clenbuterol actually is a performance enhancer too, because it has a stimulatory effect on the body, on the nervous system, right? It helps people with stamina, right? It helps people with nutrition, with nutrient partitioning. It helps you utilize the calories you're consuming better. So it helps you convert the food into energy quicker than normal, right? Speeds up your metabolism. Whenever you speed up your metabolism, your body's able to utilize the nutrients that you're putting in it faster, right? So what did Canelo always have a problem with, right? Stamina, right? So obviously, he's going to get the weight loss, the fat burning effect of the drug, but also what clenbuterol does do is it enables you to train harder, longer, and it helps with your stamina, right? So why did he take it before training camp started? Okay, well, again, my theory, my opinion, when you enter training camp, right? Some guys enter training camp already pretty much in shape, so they could focus less on the conditioning factor, less on the trying to make weight, and focus more on strategy and technique and things of that nature, right? Other guys who enter camp who are heavier than they want to be, right? Maybe not as conditioned as they want to be. The first couple weeks they got to spend getting conditioned, losing weight, getting their wind up. So if you can enter training camp already pretty much in relatively decent shape, then you have more time to spend on the other things of the strategy, technique, working on the technical aspects, and less on making the weight and working up your stamina. So that's why, in my opinion, a lot of these guys are probably dabbling in things in the off season, right? Even though they're not sparring and probably not going as hard, because they want to enter that training camp halfway there. So if you enter the training camp halfway there, it takes you less time to get to the finish line, right? So that's my theory. That's what I think he did, in my opinion. And plus, if you're training in Mexico, all those PEDs in Mexico are legal. What do Americans do? What do a lot of the American bodybuilders do? They travel to Mexico to get the drugs for, number one, because they're cheaper, and they're legal.
You get them over the counter. You get them over the counter at any pharmacy.
They're available, but they are not legal, because if you go in there and just try to get it, you have to kind of twist their arm a little bit, tell them that you're going to pay them a little extra.
Yeah, but
for them to give them to you, but they are not legal.
Drug? Is that because it's a controlled drug or because it's illegal? The fact that they have it in the pharmacy would suggest it's actually a controlled drug, so it is legal. You just need to prove
it's easy. It's easy to get a prescription for it. In other words, in the United States, they're not going to keep that in the pharmacies because clenbuterol was not designed for human consumption. It was designed for horses. It was designed for horses.
It's available at a pharmacy. It's available at the farmer's feed store. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So it's different.
I mean, I'm not going to debate that. I don't know.
As well as
I take your word for that. I'll take your word for that.
Go to an establishment and purchase it, even if you have to persuade them, shows that it isn't really illegal. There are just controls in
Let's
place.
concede.
You can't go to a place in the UK and over the counter get clenbuterol.
Let's make this concession. It's much more easily accessible in Mexico than it is in the UK or the United States.
Yeah, that's true. But there was a time period here in the US when everybody could get steroids too.
Correct.
Because you could get a prescription. That was before they found out that it was harmful. You know what I'm saying?
It's not really hard. It's not really hard to get a TRT prescription here in the United States or an HRT prescription in the United States. But,
but that's what all the baseball players were doing, and Lamont Peterson.
Yeah.
To be honest, things.
Sorry to interrupt you, Joe.
That's okay. Go ahead.
Things are a lot stricter here because we have a government-paid for health service, so it costs the government money to provide these drugs. In America, obviously, you've got privatized institutions that make money out of providing them for you. So that's the main difference here. It's like it's not really in the healthcare professional's interest to actually write you that prescription. So you have to go a bit further to prove that you need it. Doesn't mean say you can't get the stuff. You just have to go privately and other things. But there are more controls here.
But to me, and this is my opinion, it's totally my opinion. It's just based on what I consider circumstantial evidence. Every time these guys pop positive, I would say at least 95% of the time, the substance that's detected in their system is at trace amounts. So that suggests to me that they're doing it when off competition, when the fight's not signed. That's my opinion.
The whole thing that you laid out about why someone would do that is more appropriate to boxing than any other sport, because it's one of the few sports where you have a large number of athletes out of shape in between competition.
Yes.
If you take athletics as an example, who they only compete for 3-4 months of the year, unless they do the indoor, they're never out of shape like that. Ever. Yeah. So for boxers to be struggling to stay in shape when they're not in competition during their off season, there's more incentive for them to look for supplementary help. And
absolutely,
I definitely think clenbuterol is one of the most widely used drugs to achieve that for the reasons Beeb laid out. Irrespective.
There's also the weight cut. There's also the weight cut factor, which isn't necessarily an issue in athletics or other sports too.
Well, yes and no, because I mean, if you're a 100 meters sprinter, your power to weight ratio is crucial to your performance.
No, I'm not saying that you don't need to be slim and in shape. What I mean is you don't have to step on a scale within 48 hours of a fight.
You don't have to make a number, but if your weight is right, then you won't perform in that race. So it'll be equally monitored, maintained. So whilst you haven't got to maybe make a weight that isn't optimal for your performance, you have to maintain your weight. And they maintain it all year round, pretty much. They don't fluctuate in large amounts.
I understand that, John. But what I'm saying is the walk-around weight in athletics is close to the competition weight. The walk-around weight in boxing is drastically different than the competition weight. That's all I'm saying.
I'm trying to highlight two reasons for that.
Yeah.
First of all, the athlete never actually lets it get drastically past their competition weight. Whereas do. Secondly, the point that I think you're making is you get a lot of boxers performing at weights that probably aren't optimal for them.
Exactly. That's exactly it.
I'm a big opponent. I'm a huge opponent of these day before weigh-ins because I think it gives these boxers a false sense of security that I could strip myself down of everything and put it all back in 36 hours, which is fundamentally really difficult or damn near close to impossible. Because if you strip your body of all its nutrients and you really deplete it to a state, it's going to take you upwards of 72 hours, maybe even 4 days to get all that nutrition back in your system, right? You're going to have an imbalance of electrolytes. You're going to have issues with cramping and stuff. These guys, that are walking around at 170 and fighting at 147. That never happened. That never happened back in the 60s and 70s and 80s. It just wasn't realistic.
If you look at Sugar Ray Robinson, he never fought at the weight limit at 160 pounds.
No, very rarely did he.
Yeah,
he fought at his natural weight. He fought at his optimal competition weight, which was near his walking around weight. The problem in boxing is you have all these added incentives to cheat because you need to do these drastic weight cuts. And it's very difficult to do that naturally and healthy at the same time. It's very difficult.
I'd maintain it's impossible. But also, I think the benefits of doing this are vastly overblown because I've just highlighted somebody who I believe would probably beat most middleweights today. I mean, he wasn't significantly smaller in terms of length. And I think the skill factor that Robinson had would have been too much for all these guys who spend all their time messing about with cheating and trying to manipulate their weight and not actually focusing on their skill set.
That's why I think the day before weigh-ins put these guys in a situation where they have the false sense of security that I could walk around at 170 and get down to 147. So to basically expand upon your point, I think it all becomes a conditioning camp more so than a real training camp working on technique and strategy. It's more of a fat camp for a lot of these guys. And that's where I think the difference is from the previous fighters back in the day where they actually had real training camps and it wasn't all about trying to make weight. Now you had some exceptions to the rule like Roberto Duran, Jake LaMotta, right? Those guys used to blow up really big in between fights.
Actually, Ali, another one of them as well.
Yeah, Ali got big. He got up. He would get up to about 240-ish, 250-ish in between fights. But
the first rematch with Sonny Liston had to be postponed because he'd given himself and he herniated his intestine from over a year.
Oh, I didn't know that. Yeah, I didn't know that.
That's news to me.
I can provide you with documented evidence for it.
No, I'm not doubting it. I'm just saying. Thank you for sharing that news. I did not know.
I believe it.
But that was for me personally. That was Ali's Achilles heel. Was actually he was a bit like not as bad, but a bit like Bo. Food was his Achilles heel.
Yeah, Ali hated training. He hated to train. He didn't like training.
I also think it's why when he came back into the 70s, he wasn't the same fighter because he wasn't really that old, and he didn't take a lot of physical punishment in the 60s, particularly.
Yeah, I mean, even Sugar Ray Robinson would make statements like, "I don't really like boxing. I only do it because I'm good at it and I can make money at it." So, that's just prime examples of people who really don't necessarily. I'm not going to say Ali didn't love boxing, but it was more of a job to him, more so than something that he actually loved to do because he didn't really like to train. He would say that he hates training, and Sugar Ray Robinson, another guy, said, I'd rather be a dancer. I'd rather be an actor. I only do this because I'm good at it and I can make money doing it. So
I don't think he had the same issues with training though. I think he was a very physically active person, whereas Ali wasn't.
No, I agree. He wasn't as addicted to food as Ali. He wasn't really an overeater either. He was always lean. He would rather go out and party and dance and mess around with women more so than eat.
Yeah.
Yeah,
he had the same problem that Joe had, I think. Joe Louis.
Joe, I got to jump up out of here, but thank you as always for bringing me on and for the great convo. John, always a great convo. Same with you, No Pal, and I'll check in with all you guys later. Thank you.
Yeah. So even Chavez Jr., the weight limit for this fight with who's he fighting there? Vitor Belfort, right? He's fighting Vitor Belfort, right? Anderson Silva. Anderson Silva. I'm sorry. De La Hoya is fighting Vitor Belfort, and Chavez is fighting Anderson Silva. So that weight limit was 182. He still couldn't make that, right? So yeah, my apologies. It's Anderson Silva. I apologize for that. So he still couldn't make the weight. So it just goes to show you that what did the day before weigh-in really accomplish? Because guys are still missing weight, and all it does is make the situation worse, in my opinion. If you didn't have the day before weigh-ins, you'd have these guys having to fight in their real weight classes, in my opinion. That's just how I see it.
Well, the reason it came into place was the link between lack of brain fluid and serious injury.
Correct. The cerebral spinal fluid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the issue should really start at the beginning of camp. You should have to make weight before you go in camp, in my opinion, to be within 7 or 10 pounds of your fighting weight before camp starts.
But how much research did they actually do to make that claim that in 24 to 36, well, in 36 hours, if you're depleted, right, and you're dehydrated and your body does lack the cerebral spinal fluid in your brain, have they actually done studies that would support their claims that a fighter would replenish all those fluids in the brain and the body that it needs? Like, was there actually research done?
Good enough. I mean, whatever studies they have done, Beeb, I doubt that they were done properly, and it was more reaction to injuries that took place. But if you did it the other way around, and you said, if you're a fighter at 147 pounds, you have to make weight 3 times a year and before camp. So if they actually had their weights monitored, that would be the best way to actually get genuine weight classes, which we don't have.
And let me ask another question. By having the fights go down from 15 rounds to 12 rounds, has there been a decrease in fatalities in the sport of boxing since they made that change? Is there any evidence to suggest or support that fighting 12 rounds is safer than fighting 15? If there is, I'd like to know about it, if someone could provide me with that evidence, because they just do these things thinking that it's right and it's better and it's safer. But do they actually do the research to support what they're saying?
Well, the reason that they happen, though, but you got to look at why they make these changes.
Oh, I understand why they happen, but
it's not possible to have done the research, because boxing gets under pressure because there's been an incident and they need to appease the public. Yeah. So there's a bit of pseudoscience put out there, and then they make a change it's more about placating authorities and the general public. It's got nothing to do with evidence-based research to prove that this is done, because it's done too quickly anyway.
To me, it just seems like they're putting a Band-Aid on an issue.
Well, of course they are. I mean, there's no question that that's what happens, because there isn't the time to actually do the research when they make the change. On top of that, I mean, to do it properly would actually be difficult, because you'd have to have a control group. You'd have to have a big enough population to get meaningful results. You'd have to get pretty much every single boxer registered to agree to be part of the investigation as well. I just think it's actually impossible.
Yeah. I think, let me go back to the same day weigh-in or thing. I think that they really did that for other reasons, because it's safer for them in case somebody comes in overweight. I think it's safer for them, and because you got all these people investing big money in boxing, and it's just safer, for them. And I don't really think it was the other thing. I know a couple people died because of it, but I think it's just safer for these big money investors to do it the way.
So what you're saying is, no, Paul, that it allows them to not have to cancel fights.
Yes, I believe that.
That's a great point, and I think that's probably the most plausible argument in my opinion. I think I can co-sign that one. That's a great point.
Plus that, it's kind of hard to find a backup opponent. You would already have to have one in mind.
Yeah.
Which I think they already do that, but with that extra day, well, anybody will be super disappointed if somebody else would want to pull out of a fight like that.
No, I think that's a great point. I agree with that.
I definitely think that whenever you look at these things, money is going to be one of the biggest factors. And that's clearly an advantage to the promoters to have that little bit of leeway.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, guys. Anyone got any last closing thoughts here? Because I think we pretty much covered a lot of stuff already. Not much more to go over. I'm not really crazy excited about this schedule of fights today. I think they're all mismatches. They're all one-sided affairs. No real competitive matchups, in my opinion. Maybe.
Oh,
that,
just wanted to know, Beeb, are these fights all gonna overlap each other?
It's counter programming at its worst, and this is another thing that I think boxing gets wrong time and time again, shooting itself in the foot by these guys counter programming each other. There's they could do a better job of this. So yeah, a lot of these fights are going to overlap each other. You're going to have to use the DVR definitely today. And if you have, and if obviously if you have the zone, you can go back and watch the DAZN fights later. I'm gonna probably watch the Top Rank card. I'm interested in seeing the Inoue fight, and none of the fights are gonna last long, in my opinion. I hope I'm wrong, but I just think they're all gonna be quick stoppages, all of them, in my opinion. And but I've been pleasantly surprised in some of these fights, and hopefully I can be pleasantly surprised tonight.
To me, it's just like an exercise in shaking off a lot of ring rust, to be honest.
Possibly, yeah, possibly.
It needs to be done.
But Charlo already had that fight with the.
No, not Charlo so much. More the Top Rank side. The Charlo, I'm not interested in that fight at all.
Yeah, I can't. I'll watch that because I have to talk about it on tomorrow's show. But I'm not remotely interested in that Showtime card at all. Not remotely.
No.
And I it pains me to have to say that, but it's the truth. I'm just not excited about it.
Yeah, I just wish they'd pushed the whole situation with the Charlos better, because I actually quite like them, but they're not. They're just being mismanaged as far as
we were talking about this earlier, John, and I think UK gets it right, and United States gets it wrong. And United States seems to be, and particularly on the PBC side, they're putting the cart before the horse. So you have Fox, which is a basic cable channel in America. Everybody that owns a television set, they don't need a cable box. They don't need to pay for Fox is free. So if you have a deal with Fox, why would you not want to put these guys on Fox where the most eyeballs would be able to see them, right? So get them on Fox first. Get them on Fox first, and let people get to see them that normally wouldn't see them, and then put them on pay-per-view. But they're shooting these guys and putting them right on pay-per-view too quickly, in my opinion. Too much.
But the question I've got is, the double header that they had, was that a Fox pay-per-view or a Showtime pay-per-view? Because I don't know.
The Charlo brothers double header?
Yeah.
I think that was a pay-per-view, if I'm not mistaken.
No. But which platform is that, Fox or Showtime?
I can't remember. I think it was Showtime. I want to say. No, I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
It seemed to me that Fox is distancing themselves because they're disappointed with the performance of the PBC.
Yeah, I'm not sure if Fox is going to continue to work with PBC once the deal is completed. I don't think Fox is happy.
No, because the numbers are over there haven't been good at all. Whichever platform that double header was on, it was actually a good value for money pay-per-view if you were a hardcore boxing fan, but they just didn't sell it. It didn't do any numbers, did it?
No.
So they're just being managed. But yeah, I suppose that's my final thoughts. It's disappointing the way that the Charlos are being mismanaged, because they've got a lot of upside. To be honest.
A lot of potential, right? A lot of potential. Both of them.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks, Beeb. Anyway.
All right, John. Nice talking to you, man. Always a pleasure. No, Paul. What are your final thoughts here, bro? What are your thoughts on tonight? What are you most interested in tonight? And are you a little bit disappointed in the counter programming?
Yeah, I freaking hate that, man. Since they always do this, and they make it hard because we're actually paying for every individual service. You know what I mean? That we watch, and for them to counter program like each other, it's just, you know what I mean? They're shooting boxing in the foot. Yeah, that's about it, B.
All right, man.
Appreciate it, brother. Have a great day.
You too, man. Nice talking to you. Peace out. Yeah, so I mean, we pretty much covered everything that we could cover today. Great show. Thank you, everyone in the chat. Thank you for the super chats. Thank you for the support. Yeah, it's going to be a busy day of fights, but again, none of these fights really are inspiring, or they're not really dynamic fights. They're not really overly interesting matchups, but I'm going to watch them all, and hopefully I'm wrong. Hopefully tomorrow I could say to you guys that I was pleasantly surprised and I was shocked that this guy did this or that guy did that or whatever. But it, looks like these are all going to be quick stoppages today or tonight, I should say. Make sure you check us out, 7 p.m. Eastern Time, Ringside Reporter Podcast. Myself, Eric Lauder. Make sure you check me out every Thursday, 8 p.m. Eastern Time on D-Style Boxing's Roundtable. 2 great shows. And as always, continue to support the channel. Subscribe, like the video, share the video if you can. All super chats are greatly appreciated because they go into helping the channel grow and paying for the bills around here. All right, Beavis out. Talk to y'all soon. Stay safe, and I will catch you guys later.